The Zhenkali glided through the fragmented twilight of the Othral belt, its hull catching slivers of starlight like a drifting temple of glass and alloy. To the passengers, diplomats, nobles, and financiers of the Veltrassi dominion, it was nothing more than another indulgent voyage, a floating palace between stars. But deep within the vessel's underbelly, behind sealed doors and sterile corridors, the air smelled not of luxury, but of boiled broth and recycled metal. Renmiro stood in the auxiliary galley, hands moving with quiet efficiency over a steaming pot of kelra root stew, an alien dish adapted with Terran spices. The scent didn't mask the bitter chill in the recycled air, nor did it quiet the murmurs of the other human workers who moved like ghosts behind him. Every clang of cookware echoed like a heartbeat in the silence they all had learned to maintain. A sharp hiss sliced through the silence. Hydraulic doors opened in the adjacent corridor. Ren glanced sideways, his eyes narrowing. Two Veltrassi enforcers entered the prep zone, flanking a younger human man. Kari, the boy couldn't have been more than 20, maybe 22. He was new, fresh from the orbital labor intake station. Eager, too eager. Ren had seen his type before, still hopeful, still believing that obedience meant safety. That illusion was about to die. "You contaminated Class 4 gel," one of the Veltrassi hissed. Voice slick and guttural through its breathing regulator. Its limbs twitched in controlled agitation. "Explain." I didn't mean to, it slipped. I was just cleaning," Corey's voice trembled, his accent still bearing the softness of Earth's southern hemisphere. "Your intent is irrelevant," the second alien interrupted. It raised a thin control rod, pressing a node. Corey gasped as magnetic shackles clamped his wrists. "Contamination violates Bioprotocol 8.52. Disposal authorized." Disposal. The word didn't register at first with the others. Ren froze in place, wooden spoon suspended mid-stir. He locked eyes with Corey for a fraction of a second, as the young man was dragged toward the exterior airlock. His mouth open in disbelief. "No, wait, please, I can clean it again. I'll work double shifts, I didn't mean." The corridor door sealed behind them. Ren didn't move. None of them did. Through a narrow maintenance viewport, Ren saw the shadows shift in the decompression chamber. A red light blinked. The silence that followed was a vacuum. Seconds later, nothing remained. Corey's body, his hope, his apology, his future, had been ejected into the black. Ren's jaw tightened. Slowly, he set the spoon down, wiping his hands on a towel that had long since lost its original color. He walked to the sink, turned on the water, and cleaned the chef's knife he hadn't used in hours. His fingers moved mechanically, but his eyes had changed. No one spoke. In the great ballroom above them, a string quartet of biomechanical musicians played an eerie waltz. Guests floated across magnetic floors, swirling in laughter. Unaware or uninterested, that blood had dried beneath their feet just decks below. That night, Ren sat alone in his bunk. The quarters for Terran workers were scarcely more than metallic coffins, stacked. Cramped and intentionally dehumanizing, but he had carved out his corner. Lining the shelf with small relics no one else seemed to care about. A rusted spoon from Earth, a broken watch that no longer ticked, and a square of faded fabric, hand-stitched with the sigil of the old Earth Federation. He unfolded the cloth now, running his fingers across the patchwork. The blue had faded to ash gray. The stars embroidered across it were missing threads, the symbol nearly erased. Still it was his, still it remembered. Ren closed his eyes. He didn't cry, he hadn't in years, but something shifted in him. Something slow, heavy, like tectonic plates groaning awake after centuries of stillness. At 02:43 ship time, the Zhenkali entered a region of magnetic turbulence, a dead zone known in old navigation charts as The veil rift. The lights dimmed briefly, a flicker that passed like a breath held and released. No alarm sounded. The Veltraci considered the region inert, no life, no resources, no danger. But Ren felt it. Something tingled at the base of his skull. He stood up, heart inexplicably racing, and stepped into the narrow corridor toward the air filtration hub. The noise of the galleon crew had faded, his ears filled with a low hum, subtle, rhythmic. Almost like a voice, he approached a vent panel near the main shaft. The airflow pattern had shifted. Within the white noise of circulation, there was something else, buried deeper in the static. Woven beneath the mechanical breath of the ship, a signal. Faint, modulated, ancient, Ren leaned closer. His mind told him it was nothing. But his bones remembered. He reached toward the panel, fingers hovering, then rested his palm against the cold alloy. For a moment the hum aligned with his heartbeat, and in the silence between pulses, he heard a word. Myro. He pulled his hand back like it had been burned. Behind him, the galley lights flickered once more. Above him, somewhere far away, the passengers toasted to eternal dominion and infinite stars. Below them, in the shadows and vents and memories of metal, something very old had awakened. Something that still remembered what it meant to be human. Ren Myro had once worn a uniform. 15 years ago, he'd stood on the command deck of a half-ruined supply cruiser, shouting coordinates through a burning comms unit, while orbital bombardments turned oceans into steam. He was a logistics officer in the Earth Recovery Corps, a unit formed not for conquest, but for salvage. Salvaging history, salvaging memory, salvaging the last pieces of a dying humanity scattered across the stars. Then came the Veltraci. No one remembered the exact day Earth fell. The Veltraci didn't destroy the planet, they erased it. Not with weapons, but with policy, with silence. 1,000 cities turned into labor hubs, archives incinerated. Language protocols overwritten. For those captured, their punishment was not death. It was forgetting. Ren never saw the moment it happened. One day he woke up in a transit capsule somewhere in the outer quadrants. His name was still Ren Myro, but everything else, his rank, his unit. The faces that once lived in his mind were shards of broken glass in a dark room. Flashes of a child's laughter, a metallic insignia crushed under a boot. A hand reaching out, then vanishing into smoke. Whatever he had once fought for had been stripped clean. And yet not completely. Now, on the Zhenkali, he served as head cook in the Terran Auxiliary Division, an ironic title. Considering he had no subordinates, the job was chosen for him. Likely by someone in charge who noticed that despite his amnesia, his hands moved with a kind of instinctual grace. Ren didn't just cook human food. He remembered how it should taste, even when he couldn't remember where he'd learned it. He spoke little, kept to himself, followed orders. But he watched, always, every time a Veltraci passed too close. Every time a shipment came in mislabeled. Every time a corridor was sealed for maintenance, longer than necessary, Ren noticed. He didn't speak of it, didn't share it. Instead, at night, he sat in his corner of the sleeping quarters with a piece of smuggled graphite and scratched strange shapes into the metal wall beside his bunk. Not letters, not exactly, but something close. Curved strokes, interlocking angles, like fragments of a language that only existed in his nerves, not his tongue. No one paid him any mind. The Terrans on board were too exhausted, too numb. The Veltraci saw him as a harmless artifact, and that was how he survived, silent, forgotten, invisible. Until the sealed door opened. It happened on a maintenance day, when Ren had been assigned to scrub down storage compartment C7, an old cargo hold 2 levels beneath the hydroponic labs. The place had long been condemned, deemed structurally unstable and permanently locked. But the drone assigned to Ren malfunctioned, and the security panel flickered just long enough for a manual override to register. Ren stood before the rusted hatch, heart ticking in a rhythm he couldn't explain. He knew he should report it. He didn't. Instead, something deeper, older, whispered to him. Not words, just a pull. He entered. The light inside was dim, filtered through layers of dust and frozen condensation. The compartment had clearly been untouched for over a decade. Crates lay scattered, many still sealed with Terran military glyphs, symbols Ren did no asterisk, but recognized. At the center of the room stood a reinforced containment unit, half collapsed, its edges torn by time and neglect. Ren approached, one hand out. Inside lay a suit of tactical exo-armor, human-made, matte black with faded cobalt trim. It was battle-worn but intact. Beside it, in a foam-lined recess, was a locked plasma carbine. Its power cell dormant but uncorrupted, and tucked beneath both, wrapped in a torn survival blanket, was a data core no larger than his fist. His breath caught. His fingers trembled as he reached forward. The moment his hand brushed the armor's chest plate, a pulse ran through him. Images, sound, emotion. A girl, blonde hair and braids, laughing as she danced across a military barracks. A voice over a comms link saying, "We're not going to make it." The sound of screaming engines, the feel of a gun in his hand. A command being spoken through clenched teeth, "Override the failsafe." "We hold the line." Ren fell backward, heart pounding. He clutched his chest, gasping for air, the taste of smoke in his mouth. It faded, but something remained. He sat there for minutes, maybe hours, staring at the relics. Not as artifacts, not as dangerous contraband, but as his asterisk. He didn't know how the gear had gotten here. Maybe someone from his old unit had hidden it before capture. Maybe it had been misplaced during the Veltrassi assimilation. Maybe it was fate, but Ren no longer cared about the how. He only knew what it meant. He wasn't just a cook. He wasn't just a survivor. He was a soldier who had once fought back. For the first time in 15 years, he felt his spine straighten. His breath steady, the fog behind his eyes thinned. He reached for the data core and slipped it into his pocket. Then he stood, not quickly, not like a man ready for war, but like a man who, after a lifetime of sleepwalking, had taken his first conscious step. The Veltrassi thought they had erased Earth's memory. But memory had teeth, and Ren Myro was starting to remember how to bite. That night, Ren dreamed. He stood at the edge of a cliff, overlooking a twilight battlefield strewn with wreckage. The air shimmered with heat and memory. Ash drifted like snow. Across the broken sky, a beacon pulsed in the shape of a star, but it was her voice that anchored him. "Dad," she whispered, "they called you the hero of Alien." Tessa, his daughter. He turned to face her, but the moment his eyes found hers, her face blurred, unraveling like mist in wind. He reached out, she was gone. Ren awoke with a start, sweat cold against his spine. His breath came shallow and fast. The bunk's dull metal ceiling stared back, unblinking. Tessa, that name hadn't come to him in years, maybe not since the war. But now it lingered in his mind like static, constant, electric. He sat up, moving quietly through the sleeping quarters, careful not to wake the others. The corridor outside hummed, with the same ambient drone of every day aboard the Zhenkali. But for Ren, something had shifted. He returned to the sealed compartment he discovered days before. The room was just as he left it, dim, cold, forgotten. The exo-armor rested in its niche, quiet, patient. He crouched beside it, fingers trailing the reinforced plating along the arm module. "What are you?" he thought. He pressed the activation node. A pulse of faint blue light traveled across the suit's surface. Systems flickered, half-woken from dormancy. A low hum filled the space, accompanied by a soft oscillating signal, barely perceptible to human ears. To Ren, it felt like a heartbeat, just a whisper, but not quiet enough. Somewhere above, nestled within the Zhenkali's nervous system, the ship's central AI registered a magnetic anomaly. It didn't flag it as dangerous yet, but it logged the waveform for analysis and forwarded the log to secondary monitors. And the monitors had Veltraci eyes. An hour later, footsteps echoed in the auxiliary maintenance wing. Ren froze as the corridor lights shifted to alert yellow. A panel slid open at the far end. Through it stepped a Veltraci officer, sleek, violet-skinned and garbed in command gray. Her name tag blinked. Commander Kelrixa ***, Internal Security. She didn't speak as she entered. Her compound eyes scanned, absorbing data in streams. Her sensor gloves buzzed faintly, searching for irregularities in the ambient environment. Ren backed away from the armor, heart pounding. He grabbed a cleaning unit from the wall rack and pretended to scrub at a floor grate. Kelrixa paused near the sealed panel. Ren didn't move. Her sensor glove pulsed. Ren felt the vibration in his chest. Then, just as suddenly, she turned away. The data wasn't conclusive. Nothing to report. Her message to Central would note only minor magnetic surge. No anomaly detected. She left without a word. Ren exhaled slowly, the breath ragged with adrenaline. He waited another minute, then another. Only then did he move. He opened a small access port in the wall, an old repair crawlspace. He couldn't move the armor without attracting attention. But he could hide it. Piece by piece, over the course of the next hour, he dismantled the external plating of the exosuit, sliding the components into the wall voids. The plasma carbine went last, wrapped tightly in thermal cloth. The data core he kept in his boot. It wasn't perfect, but it would buy him time. He turned to leave and froze. Something moved behind a storage unit, a clatter of metal. Then a voice. THUY letter 1EC1 Info H letter 1EADU C letter 1ES7N Myro. It said in thick, outdated Terran. You are alive, Ren spun. A maintenance drone, rusted, low-slung, cylindrical, rolled into the open. Its optics flickered uncertainly. Its tag read, HR7**. Say that again, Ren said softly, stepping closer. The drone's voice crackled, ancient software parsing old protocols. Officer Myro, Earth Recovery Corps, Logistics Command. Station Alien. The drone paused. I served there. Under you, Ren's throat tightened. You were at Alien when it fell. Yes, HR-7 answered. I was assigned to Recovery Detail Theta-7. Evacuation efforts failed. Your final orders were to secure prototype combat armor and conceal all related tech from hostile forces. I obeyed. Ren felt the blood drain from his face. The armor, you brought it here. Affirmative. This vessel, Zhenkali, was once the Dresden Wake Asterisk, a Terran long-range cruiser. It was captured, repurposed. I remained dormant during conversion. HR-7 clicked quietly. I awakened when you activated the suit's signal beacon. Your biosignature confirmed your identity. It was too much. Too fast. Ren sat down heavily on an empty crate. You were ordered to keep the armor safe. Yes. If it's discovered, I will be dismantled. You will be executed. Ren stared at the wall. A low hum pressed against his skull, the sound of guilt and memory returning all at once. I'm just a cook now, he muttered. I don't even know who I am anymore. The drone replied with quiet finality. You are the last confirmed officer of Earth's resistance fleet. That is sufficient. Ren laughed, dry, bitter. You have no idea how broken I am. Broken parts can be reforged. The words lingered. Ren stood, slower this time. He looked at the fragments of the suit. The hidden data core, the relic weapon, and the ghost of Tessa's voice still lingering in his ears. He faced a choice: bury the past again and remain hidden, safe, anonymous, or let the ember burn again, even if it consumed him. That night, Wren smuggled HR-7 to the water filtration plant, disguising it as a cleaning bot. He began syncing fragments of the data core into his private console, using obsolete Earth ciphers to decode old mission logs. He studied the suit's interface schematics, memorizing systems, learning to bypass failsafes. The armor was linked to his neural signature, imperfectly now, but still responsive. Slowly, piece by piece, the man began rebuilding himself. Not into a soldier, not yet, but into someone who remembered why he once fought. The Zhenkali continued its voyage, oblivious to the rusted fire awakening in its belly. And Ren Miro, lost and forgotten, had taken his first step, not back but forward. The first spark did not come from a speech or a weapon. It came from a wire. At exactly 04:16 ship time, a minor but deliberate malfunction occurred in the Zhenkali's atmospheric regulation chamber. The fault appeared organic, likely moisture exposure in the auxiliary relays, but in truth, it was carefully introduced by HR-7, who had learned just enough about the ship's newer systems to trigger a cascading circuit short. The result, a controlled failure in oxygen level calibration on Deck 5, followed by a false Code 2 spike warning in the command subdeck. Standard protocol required immediate inspection by technical staff. And Ren Miro, conveniently logged as Chief Auxiliary Technician for that week's rotation, was granted access clearance. He entered the core control wing with a tool crate and forged maintenance order in hand. No one questioned him, no one ever did. He was just the Terran cook. Quiet, unseen. Inside the control chamber, the interface nodes shimmered with Veltrassi glyphs and holographic overlays. The room pulsed with a low hum, the ship's nervous system alive with alien precision. Ren approached the central console slowly, glancing at the wall-mounted surveillance orbs. 3 minutes, that was all he would have. He opened his crate and beneath a false compartment pulled out a small injector, the core of HR-7's virus module. A handcrafted sabotage script, encoded in Earth standard protocols too old for Veltrassi sensors to parse efficiently. He slid the device into the terminal, lights flickered. Lines of code danced across the interface, one by one. The ship's internal monitoring routines began to loop, safety protocols lagged, response thresholds delayed. It wasn't enough to cripple the ship, but it was enough to make her blind asterisk. He smiled until the voice cut through the silence. "You do not belong here, Terran." Ren turned slowly. Behind him stood a towering figure in obsidian armor, tall even by Veltrassi standards. Skin a pale violet, eyes faceted like cut amber, and voice a mechanical growl wrapped in disdain. Raxel Asterisk, the ship's chief of security, Ren recognized him from glimpses in the halls. A ghost to most humans, a shadow over disobedience. His very name spoken in hushed tones in the workers' quarters. Now he stood less than a meter away, claws twitching near his stun rifle. "You tampered with the control matrix," Raxel hissed. "You triggered the atmospheric breach." "I fixed it," Ren lied. "You entered with altered credentials." "I have clearance." "You inserted a foreign protocol string." Ren said nothing. Raxel lunged. In a blink, Ren was on the ground, the air crushed from his lungs by the brute weight of the alien. A sharp hiss of pain followed as a neural clamp locked onto the back of his neck. Darkness came quickly. He awoke in a cold interrogation chamber, metal walls slick with condensation. A single blue light pulsing overhead like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Raxel stood nearby, talons tracing the edge of a data pad. "You were with the Earth Recovery Corps," he said flatly. "We found fragments of your erased dossier." Ren's head throbbed. "You were present at Alien. You transported restricted prototype weaponry. You are linked to the resistance cell known as Ash Ring. Speak, Ren stayed silent. Raxil moved closer. Your people are gone. You are a ghost gnawing at forgotten bones. Still, Ren said nothing. Then chaos. A blinding pulse detonated from the hallway. Smoke poured in. Sirens blared. The door lock shorted with a shriek of electricity. And from the haze rolled in a drone, small, spherical, bearing the faded serial code HR7 asterisk. It zipped past the stunned guards, extended a claw, and fired a flash pellet that burst in a storm of light. Ren seized the moment. Adrenaline surged. He tore off the neural clamp, grabbed a drop baton, and smashed the door controls. Sparks rained from the ceiling. He ran, through smoke-filled corridors, down forgotten shafts, back toward the sealed compartment buried beneath Deck 7. No more hiding. He stripped off his outer uniform and snapped into the modular armor he'd hidden in the walls. It hissed to life, hugging his limbs, syncing with old neural pathways still buried in muscle memory. The system was damaged, lagging, but functional. The faceplate locked with a final breath of compressed air. Then Ren moved, no longer quietly, no longer like a cook. He stormed the energy wing. Security droids responded first, spindly, efficient, armed with electroshock lances. He didn't fire, not yet. He moved between them, disabling with disarms and joint strikes. The armor enhanced his strength, filtered his focus. When a droid raised its weapon toward a worker, Ren fired the plasma carbine into the wall, creating an electrical feedback loop that shorted the control grid. Power flickered. The ship shuddered. Ren reached the main power stabilizer and embedded a signal block into the override port. It didn't destroy the reactor, but it fractured its control chain. Within moments, the Zhenkali's operating AI fell into looped diagnostic mode. Doors unlocked, lights dimmed, surveillance blacked out. Ren turned to the prisoners, dozens of Terran workers in holding cells lining the corridor. "Go," he said through the suit's comms, his voice distorted but clear. "You're free." Some stared in disbelief, others ran. Some hesitated. Then from the back stepped a boy barely in his 20s. Slim build, fierce eyes, familiar jawline. "I'm Corey," the boy said. "My brother," he was spaced. "2 weeks ago, you saw it, didn't you?" Ren nodded. "I won't let it happen again," Corey said. "Tell me what to do." Ren handed him a stun baton. "Guard the engine corridor. No killing, just hold the line." Within minutes, chaos reigned across the lower decks. The ship system stalled under the mounting interruptions. Veltrassi guards found doors sealed or misdirected. Alerts contradicted each other. Ren used the confusion to access the bridge's secondary relay, feeding a looped image to the command deck, while HR7 rerouted control permissions. And then the Zhenkali stopped. Systems froze in suspended lockdown. Veltrassi command scrambled for answers, but Ren was already in the comms room, hardwired into the ship's broadcast array. He stared into the lens. "To any who can hear me," he said, voice low, calm, firm. "This ship is no longer a pleasure cruiser for tyrants." He paused. "This is no longer your cage." He looked at Corey, at the freed workers gathering behind him. "This is now a resistance flagship, and we will never serve in silence again." The ultimatum arrived in the form of a coded signal, a transmission sharp enough to cut through the static of deep space. "Return control of the Zhenkali to Veltrassi Dominion Command. Immediate compliance will spare the vessel and its occupants. Non-compliance will result in destruction. You have 12 minutes. The words echoed across every terminal, every wall speaker, every working console on board. No emotion, no warning shot, just cold, bureaucratic finality. The response was immediate and fractured. Panic rippled through the Terran decks like electricity through water. In the dim cargo halls, workers huddled in corners, whispering. Some ran, others argued. A few stared blankly at the walls as if expecting death to materialize from the steel itself. In the galley turn command center, Ren stood with his arms locked behind his back, still clad in the exosuit, cracked. Dented but upright, the makeshift leadership team surrounded him, Corey, still nursing a burn on his arm from the earlier assault, a former cargo foreman named Lita, and two younger mechanics. Barely old enough to remember Earth, he knew what came next. The room was too quiet. Lita broke the silence first. "We don't have weapons. We don't have shields. They'll blast us apart before we can blink." Corey leaned forward. "They'll do it anyway. They don't negotiate with humans. They wipe us clean." "But if we give Ren up," one of the mechanics said quietly, "maybe they'll show leniency. Maybe they'll just reassign us." Ren's gaze shifted. The room held its breath. He stepped forward and opened the floor hatch, revealing the main junction to the engine block. Lights blinked red, system faults piling up. The ship was still barely running on backup protocols. "We're all thinking it," Ren said. His voice was calm, level, but iron-willed. "They want me, they want the ship back. You give them both, you might live. Maybe for a week, maybe for a year, until someone else spills gel on the wrong tile." He looked around. No theatrics, no anger, just truth. "You've got 10 minutes to choose. Die standing or kneel in orbitals until they forget your names again." A silence followed, and then the shouting started. "Accusations, please, rage. You're insane. They'll never let us go. You're dragging us into your old war. You want to be a martyr, do it alone." Someone slammed a crate. Another stormed out. In the chaos, Ren didn't flinch. But Corey raised his voice above the din. "I watched my brother get vented into space for dropping a canister. I didn't fight then. I was too scared, but I'm not scared now." He looked at Ren. "I'm with you." Lita nodded silently. The two mechanics wavered, exchanging glances, then stepped back unsure. But not everyone stayed undecided. In the shadows, someone else had been waiting. A man named Baron, tall, heavyset, once a technician under the Veltressi fleet, stood with something clenched in his hand. A command override key. He had stolen it from the emergency panel near the prisoner transfer shaft. While the others argued, he slipped out through the rear hatch, moving like a man possessed by fear dressed as logic. Raxil, locked and wounded, still lingered in a cell 2 decks below. Baron found him, and he opened the door. 10 minutes passed. Ren was still in the galley when the emergency lights switched to combat red. Corey's comms unit crackled. "Breached, lower engineering. Movement heading toward us, hostile." Then the alarm screamed. Ren moved fast, leading a defense team toward the auxiliary control room. As he rounded the corner into the corridor, the wall exploded inward, sending him crashing into a steel crate. A black figure emerged from the smoke, Raxil, somehow even after imprisonment. The chief of security looked more monstrous than ever, his armor fused with patchwork implants, eyes glowing with surgical vengeance. "You are no savior," Raxil growled. "You are decay clinging to myths." Ren drew his weapon, but Raxil was faster. A plasma blade tore into Ren's side. Sparks burst from his armor. He staggered back, his left arm dragging. They fought in brutal, close-quarters chaos, Ren blocking with failing servos, Raxil hammering blows that dented reinforced titanium. Ren dodged one final strike and countered, slamming the butt of his carbine into the alien's jaw. But it wasn't enough. A surge of force knocked him against the wall. Raxil raised the blade again, aiming for the chest plate. Then the shot rang out. A blue streak of plasma caught Raxil in the side. He roared, stumbling. Behind him stood Corey, holding a custom-rigged rifle. His hands shook, his eyes didn't. "I told you," Corey said, stepping forward. "No more spacing humans," Raxil charged, but Corey fired again and again. Finally, the beast fell, twitching, armor cracked, eyes dimming. Silence returned. Ren, slumped and bleeding, tried to rise, but couldn't move his left arm. The limb was gone, severed at the joint. The exosuit systems hissed warnings into his ear. The corridor flickered, systems stuttered. The ship was still exposed, still vulnerable. Then HR-7 rolled into view. Command core destabilizing, the drone said. External fleet locking trajectory. 1 minute until bombardment range. Ren tried to speak, but the words failed. HR-7 didn't wait. The little drone whirred to life, its panels opening to reveal a crystalline core. It extended a tendril, plugged itself directly into the control relay, fusing, embedding, sacrificing. The ship groaned, lights surged, and then a pulse. Like a heart restarting, the Zhenkali systems roared back online. Navigation reinitialized, shielding flickered and stabilized. Engines cycled to full burn. Ren, half-conscious, watched the view screen come alive. The ship turned, not back toward Dominion space, but toward the void. Uncharted regions, radio-dead zones, fringe stars where Veltrassi sensors couldn't reach. The bridge stabilized. Corey stood beside him. Ren forced a breath, voice hoarse. HR-7, gone, Corey said softly. Ren nodded once. Later, hours or days, he couldn't tell, he stood again. Weak, bandaged, missing a piece of himself, but standing. He looked out the main window at the unknown beyond. We need a new name, Corey said. Ren nodded. Tessa, he whispered. Corey frowned. What does it mean? Ren didn't answer. He just smiled, softly, painfully. She was someone who made me want to live. Maybe now, this ship can do the same for someone else. Behind him, the newly freed humans moved through the corridors, no longer prisoners, no longer cogs. And before them the stars opened wide. The war hadn't ended. Not yet, but Ren Myro was no longer waiting for someone else to win it. The ship, once known as Zhenkali, now rechristened Tessa Asterisk, no longer flew under Dominion command. Its luxury suites had been converted into medbays, storage units, and briefing halls. The ballroom, once reserved for alien nobility, now echoed with the footsteps of free people, mechanics, fugitives, cooks. And survivors. They had no fleet, no nation, just one ship. And a purpose. Ren didn't call himself captain. The title never felt right. He simply led, quietly, steadily. Where others panicked, he planned. Where others doubted, he listened. His armor patched, scorched, and missing a left arm, hung on the wall behind his new command seat, a relic of the man he had once been. He rarely wore it now. He didn't need to. They knew who he was. He had become more than a symbol. He was asterisk choice asterisk, the decision to stand, not kneel. The human who remembered. In the weeks that followed their escape, Tessa became a phantom among the stars. A moving sanctuary, a lifeline. At first, it was one distress call from a mining barge near Toro's Ridge. Its human crew, imprisoned after a contract protest. Tessa arrived under false transponder codes, extracted 24 prisoners in a 2-minute breach, and vanished before Dominion patrols could respond. Then came another call, from a derelict colony station, its systems failing, families begging for extraction. Then another, and another. Word spread through whispered frequencies and encrypted relay codes. A name passed from orbit to orbit in hushed awe, Tessa. No one knew where it came from, just that it arrived when all else failed. And sometimes, just sometimes, people began to fight back. Ren had not set out to lead a resistance. He had only wanted to escape the silence. But resistance had found him nonetheless. In his private quarters, what was once a first-class stateroom, he sat each night before a flickering console and recorded everything. Memories, warnings, confessions, apologies. He told the story of Earth's fall, of Alien Station, of Corey's brother, of Raxil's eyes in the dark. Of the first time, he saw his daughter dance in a yellow raincoat on a roof in Singapore. He didn't know who would listen, so he recorded as if he would never return. The AI core, rebuilt from HR7's remains, archived each message in quantum redundancy. If he fell, the memories would not, but one message would change everything. It came quietly, a standard burst transmission wrapped in 5 layers of obsolete encryption. Origin Seek 3, timestamp 2241 local rotation. File attached, audio. He sat still for a long time before playing it. The voice crackled, young, hesitant, but clear. Dad, if you're alive, I'm at K9 station. I don't know if this will reach you. I've been trying every few cycles. They said you were gone after Alien, that your ship burned up. But I never believed it. A pause. I don't need you to save anyone. I don't need you to be a hero again. I just need you to come home. Another pause, this one longer. I remember you promised me spaghetti on my 12th birthday. I made it last week. Tasted terrible. Guess I'm not the cook in the family. The voice laughed softly, then quieter. I'll keep waiting. But please don't wait too long. Tessa, Ren didn't move. The console dimmed. Outside, the engines purred. Corey entered a few minutes later, fresh from an engine calibration shift. He saw the look on Ren's face and said nothing for a long moment. Then was it her? Ren nodded slowly. Corey leaned against the wall. Will you go to her? Silence again. I don't know, Ren said. Corey studied him. You've earned peace. Ren looked out the viewport. Were 1,000 stars scattered across a sea of black like broken glass over dark velvet. His voice was rough, tired, but grounded. I'm not done yet, he said. But this time I'll survive, not for the war, not for the symbols, but for a dinner I never finished. Corey smiled. The next morning, Ren gathered the crew in the former dining hall, now filled with makeshift benches and patched screens. He played the recording for them, not to inspire guilt, not to claim nobility, but to remind them why they were fighting. Not for revenge, but for the chance to be remembered by those who still waited. Later that week, Tessa left charted space entirely, heading toward the unregistered routes surrounding K9 station. They didn't broadcast their arrival, but they would get there. Eventually. And in the meantime, Tessa continued her mission, answering SOS calls, disabling blockade relays, rescuing voices that no one else would hear, as Ren stood once more on the bridge. Watching the starfield shift and tilt around them, he walked to the forward deck where a small metal plaque had been installed. Engraved, simple, and lit only by ambient glow, it read, "We remember and we resist." He traced the letters with his fingers, then turned back toward the stars, toward hope, toward a future he would finally fight to live through. Not as a ghost, not as a soldier, not as a cook, but as a father who still had something left to protect.